Welcome back, everybody. Anybody that's new here, thanks for joining me today. We're gonna do something real quick here. I just got a little bit of time, and I just remembered I wanted to do something this spring that I forgot to do this last fall, but it still matters, and it still kind of should help most of you guys out. It's still early. It's only April. The walleye run is technically over in a few places, but I mean, there's still a lot of places that you can get into a good walleye run. And then besides that fact, I mean, you still have the whole season ahead of you. But the shallow water stuff that I want to talk about, that's still just starting. So I'm going to talk about a specific walleye rod that I got to try out last fall. And I kind of want to go over the pros and cons of it, kind of how I experienced it and everything. It's a tuned up custom rod. And I believe its name is ISP, or like inshore popping rod. I don't know exactly. I'm sure I'll have something labeled in the title and description for you guys, but we're going to go over it, the reason I needed this specific rod, and what it'll do for you guys as far as like benefiting if you're going to get that style of rod, and why I used it specifically. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you up here because it is one of my longest rods. As you guys can see, it covers my whole wall. So like, I forgot how big that tuned up customs is, but like, it's even longer than, that's my bass rod right there. So that's a heavy action. The inshore popping rod is a 7.6, and it's like a medium fast, I believe. I'm not exactly 100% sure because this is like a one-off custom rod type setup that Tuned Up Customs offers, and I wanted to try it out for a specific kind of bait that most people are familiar with. Some people aren't familiar with it, and that's the thing, is like, I'm trying to do this to kind of help you guys out. I used to do a lot of these videos. I kind of want to get back into doing them more. But so this is just one box. Let me grab the other one. And if you guys have been around, you know, I have a video literally that's basically states that this is the ultimate fall lure slash spring lure that you can use. Okay, so that's one box. That's a second box. Those are jerk baits. I'll show you kind of what I was using. So like, for instance, this is a Perfect 10. I forgot how long these are. Let me get a measurement. Okay, I'm gonna measure these. If you guys don't know, if you know exactly what I'm talking about, do me a favor. The one thing I don't know with these, and I don't think it's got it, yeah, it doesn't have them listed. So like, this is a Smithwick Perfect 10. I think that's like their glass perch or whatever. These baits are a little over 5.5 inches long. They might actually be just considered a 5.5 inch bait. I think the body is 5.5 inches long. So that's a Smithwick Perfect 10. And then, like, I have hundreds of these guys. Well, as many as they'll fit in this box. This is the Rapala HJ14. So the same thing. Yeah, it's a 5.5 inch bait. And like, it's got rattles and stuff in it, and these are, I forgot what they do with them, but there's something, I think these ones, or maybe it's the Perfect 10s. Yeah, I think the Perfect 10s, because of the way the BB is in the Perfect 10, it shifts to the back. They're supposed to help you cast further. This is what I'm trying to get at. So the two main lures that I was tossing were the HJ14s and the Perfect 10s. I was throwing some, I have these deep diver Rapalas. These are like Husky Jerks, or just a deep diver with a bigger bill. But mainly it's the idea I was trying to give you guys is the reason I went with that rod specifically. We had a long discussion about what rod would be best for throwing the heavier baits like these. Because you might not think about it, but this is a pretty heavy bait. And like I said, if you guys know, so if you're a walleye guy, please do me a favor, as I catch walleye. I'm not a complete noob when it comes to walleye, but when it comes to knowing a lot more about their baits and specifics, I'm not the best at that. I just know what works and I use it. But a big thing is I use spinning reels. Okay, so I have a very little room in here for this rod. I'm gonna try and do this without breaking it. So I use bigger spinning reels like this. Specifically, this is a 4000 series Abu Revo S. If you guys know me, I use a lot of their reels. I'll have them linked in the description what I like to use, and I'll actually have tuned up customs and the rods and reels. I'll have everything I'm talking about listed in the description if you guys want to duplicate it. This works really good. The same technique that I did works really good for smallmouth in the spring. That's the next thing I want to use this rod for, so I'm going to put it through its paces again this spring. So you'll see it more, and I'm going to talk about it more. But this Apex inshore popping rod is, like I said, it is a 7.6, and I'm going to try and set it down here on the floor without hurting it. But if you can see, it's a much stiffer rod with a long load up phase. So the thing with that was I needed something. Let me get this back up there so I don't break my rod. Okay, so I needed something specifically for shore fishing. So this is one thing I wanted to help you guys out with, was the fact that the reason you don't see me fishing for those on camera often is 9 times out of 10 my biggest walleye are coming between midnight and like 4 in the morning. Yeah, so in the fall, that's when I'm chasing my pigs usually. You can do it in the spring, so like right now till like the beginning of May, usually on most big bodies of water, so like Green Bay, Erie, Mille Lacs, all those big bodies of water that warm up the slowest will have these bites that you can capitalize on. So that's why I'm doing this now, is it should help some of you guys out that do shore fishing that don't have like a big boat. Like I don't have a big boat that can handle these bodies of water where I could take that out specifically and go fish for them. Obviously I could use it if I was out on a big boat, but the reason I got it was it gives you the opportunity to cast a bait like, you know, like one of these jerk baits, a country mile to put it lightly. The biggest thing you'll get out of that too is the specifics of that rod that I needed. Was I needed to cast a really long distance to reach any fish that were staging and or getting behind them. I'll go over that in like a Tackle Tip Tuesday or something like that. Speaking of which, just for old time's sake, I'm trying to play around with the idea of doing it again, but if you guys are new here, this is an older merch thing, but it's got the TTT for Tackle Tip Tuesday on it. If you guys want to pick that up, help out the channel and stuff like that, I would greatly appreciate that. And it helps a lot, trust me, it does. But the big thing I was talking about as far as Tackle Tip Tuesday was, like, when you're fishing for walleye, you don't want to land on their head. Because they spook, and once you spook them, they're not going to bite. A lot of people think they'll get them to bite. A lot of times they don't understand that they spooked 5 fish and one dumb one came wandering in and it bit. I've sight fished them. I've done a lot of studying. I spend a lot of time at night in the fall watching fish, seeing how they eat, doing all the things that they're supposed to do. So that's just one thing I wanted to make sure you guys understand. That's why I went with such a long rod. It's not even really that long. I know guys that have 9-foot like surf rods. So if you're fishing from shore and you're a shore guy, this should help you the most, because the other big benefit of this rod, the fact that it had that slow play tip, I forgot what kind of material it is. I'm gonna kick myself in the butt for not actually remembering this or writing it down. But the material that it actually is was allowing me to do so like a simple walleye technique, which is like, it's like a twitch and then you pause, and you try to figure out how long the pause needs to be or whatever. But when you pause, what a lot of times happens with a jerkbait, so this is how you fish them. You twitch, it'll jerk that way, and you twitch real hard and it'll shoot straight to the side. So if there's a fish here or a fish following it, this is what they see. They see it go like this, and they see it do this and go completely sideways, and they eat it like that. They'll T-bone it almost every time if you get it in front of one and they're hungry. But the big thing is in the fall, when the water's really cold, and the early spring when the water's really cold, they don't, I mean in spring it's 10 times more aggressive, but in the fall, that bite, they might come up and just go like that and like run into it. Well, the problem with that, if you have a soft rod, like a whippy one, something really big and long that's got a real whippy end to it, it might be good for absorbing their head shakes, which, by the way, I'll get into that on this, might do that, but a lot of times you don't have the feel. So like you'll have to just kind of reel into it and hope your rod loads up before they let go of it or they don't get hooked or whatever. So that rod, I was pleasantly surprised. Most of my bites at distance, so probably like the farthest end of your cast could be 200 yards or whatever. I was casting 100 yards. Realistically, I'm gonna say, yeah, between 60 and 80 yards is my casting distance with that. Maybe further than that, but with a good backwind. But what I'm trying to get to is at the end of that cast, that rod was able to feel that little tick. And the thing is when you're doing that, so I fish 832 braid. This stuff, I'll have it linked below too because it works really good. So this is 30 pound. The reason I run 30 pound as my main line is because there's a good chance you're either gonna, if you're in muskie area, you're gonna hook up a muskie, and in the fall the biggest northern pike are out to play. And last fall I didn't get a picture of it because I kind of screwed it up, but I had a 37 or 38 inch northern pike crush one of these jerk baits when I was walleye fishing. And yeah, I'm really happy I fished with stupid heavy baits because, or line, because it just wouldn't have been able to handle it otherwise. And the rod did just fine. Okay, so second thing I want to talk about, well, one of the other main things I want to talk about, that this rod, I think, as far as reviews go, you guys probably need to know this much. Okay, so the last thing, obviously, if you're picking this up for a specific walleye rod, and that's the thing that I'm basically trying to do this whole review based around, is I'm calling it my walleye rod. I'm going to use it for other things. I'm going to use it for smallmouth in the rivers, probably some northern pike, but I'm going to basically using it for like throwing jerk baits, possibly big spinners, well, medium spinners, and other types of baits like that. Rip and wraps, like those things I use in the wintertime if you guys are around, stuff that you can use, the jig and stuff like that. I'm going to use it for that kind of stuff. But for the most part, when you're hooked up with a big walleye, so that's a 20, 27 or 28 8-pounder, when you're hooked up with those, they have a big, wide head swing, or head shake for you walleye guys. And the rod itself, I discovered, I got like, I think the biggest one I got last fall was like 27 or 28. The head shakes, it stays pinned the whole time, which is a beautiful thing, because when you're fishing from shore, you got to have something that's a little bit more forgiving. You can't like just pull up over the fish with your boat, and you got to be able to handle it when they get right up next to shore and they start thrashing, and your rod needs to be able to stay with them the whole time and not fling and lose tension. That's a big thing with walleye that I've noticed over the years, is that's where you lose them, is when your rod's not ready for it and it snaps back, flings back real quick, and when they're loose, so it flings back when they create slack in your line and it rips the bait out of their mouth. So as far as a learning experience and use of that rod, I'm gonna give it, maybe I'll give it a rating. Should I rate stuff? I don't know if I should. Comment below if you think I should start rating products and stuff like that, because the big thing here is to do this so you guys benefit from it. That's why I'm doing this. It's to try and help all you guys out that are looking for like a single walleye rod like to use. One thing, I know a lot of guys, like bass guys, will say this, that they don't like using, they'd rather use a bait caster for throwing like a jerkbait. The reason for the spinning rod and the jerkbait is the guide eyes are a little bit bigger. On that one, they're not, I mean, I would say they're comparable, but the main eyes, when they're coming and going, are a little bit bigger and they don't freeze up as much. But most people don't worry about that so much. But as far as that's why I use a spinning rod. Plus, I like to have my reel hanging below me when I'm twitching it for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time, because that hurts my wrist a lot less, it feels like. But that's just something I wanted to get across to you guys. Okay, so like I was saying, I don't know if I should rate them or not. As far as my version of what I've had for like walleye dedicated rods, like I said, that's my biggest rod I've actually ever owned other than a fly rod. And the big thing is with that is it's a little bit harder to put inside things. So I like to put it inside my truck when I'm driving to and from walleye spots. And obviously if I'm fishing from shore, it's a little bit difficult if you got to get it in and around trees or any kind of obstructions. But if you're really just trying to get a bait as far out as you can and work as much territory as possible when you're fishing shore from the fall, or in the fall, or from shore in the fall, that was probably going to be my number one recommendation for anybody. I don't have any other experience with big shore casting rods like that. Like I said, my bait caster is my next biggest one. I think that's a 7.2. Yeah. So the bait caster is a medium heavy 7.2. So that's not even comparable as far as like throwing baits and stuff like that distance. But if you guys are looking for a walleye rod, I would highly suggest that one. Like I said, no bias towards anybody else. I haven't had an opportunity to use any other rods, but I honestly liked it for what it could do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else it can do. So stay tuned for those videos. I'm going to try to get into some smallmouth with those jerkbaits. Hopefully I can figure out how to get into some of these. I know a place there's some 6+, 7+ pound smallmouth, and if I can get into those with a jerkbait, I'm going to try and bring you guys along. So stay tuned for those videos. Hopefully this one helped you guys out make some decisions. Like I said, it's the Tuned Up Customs inshore popping rod. That's the 904 is the number on it. If you're talking to Tuned Up Customs, I don't believe they have it listed on their website, but it was one that we discussed and he had brought up that they had. So it's a custom rod, but you guys can get it too. So like I said, I'll link them below. Go ahead, check it out. I'll link all my stuff, the gear that I use for my walleye fishing below. Hopefully that helps some of you guys out. It'll get you guys get moving if you're new to the walleye world, and should help you get some big fish. So like I said before, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Obviously if you're not new here, you know what's up, but if you are new, can you please just remember to